The very first study that we did was with municipal court judges in Tucson, Arizona.
Judges have a kind of a clear set of values that are part of their worldview, and that is to uphold the law. And so what we thought is that if we make some judges think about their own death, they should become more punitive toward a lawbreaker. So half the judges, on a random basis, were given questionnaires that asked them about their own death. Half were not given such a questionnaire.
And then we had them actually look at an actual court case. The most common case in municipal court in Tucson is solicitation of prostitution.
They were simply asked to recommend a bond for the prostitute. Okay? What we found is the judges who were reminded of their own death before setting bond for the alleged prostitute recommended a bond of $455. The control judges who were not reminded of their own death set a bond, an average bond of $50. We do agree that we don't think about death all that much consciously in our daily lives.
Most psychological activity is quite unconscious.
We repress our concerns about death and our thoughts of death, but it's underneath. It's outside of consciousness.
When people are reminded of their mortality, for example, by completing a death anxiety questionnaire, or being interviewed in front of a funeral parlor, or even exposed to the word death that's flashed so rapidly on a computer screen, 28 milliseconds, that you don't know that you've even seen anything, when people are reminded of their own death, Christians, for example, become more derogatory towards Jews, and Jews become more hostile towards Muslims. Germans sit further away from Turkish people. Americans reminded of death become more physically aggressive to other Americans that don't share their political beliefs. Iranians reminded of death are more supportive of suicide bombing, and they're more willing to consider becoming martyrs themselves. Americans reminded of their mortality become more enthusiastic about preemptive nuclear, chemical, and biological attacks against countries who pose no direct threat to us. The uniquely human fear of death also contributes to environmental problems by fostering discomfort with nature. After all, everything in nature is of finite duration and will eventually decay and die. Laboratory studies confirm that intimations of mortality increase our contempt for and disregard of nature. After thinking about their death, people deny that humans are animals. After thinking about their death, people have more negative attitudes towards animals and consider it more appropriate to kill animals for reasons other than food and medical research. When people are reminded of death, they become more uncomfortable with their own bodies, including basic biological functions. Even sex becomes more aversive after one is reminded of death. Death reminders also make people more uncomfortable in natural settings as opposed to cultivated surroundings, and more willing to exploit natural resources such as forests for personal gain. When people are reminded of their mortality, they are very uncomfortable in nature. There's some Dutch psychologists that I like a lot, and they showed Dutch people pictures of forests and pictures of suburban neighborhoods with lawns and stuff. And what they found is that in controlled conditions, the Dutch participants liked the forests more than the suburban neighborhoods, but when they were reminded of their mortality, they liked the neighborhoods better than the forest. There's a strong positive correlation between death anxiety and materialism. That is, people with high death anxiety tend to be much more materialistic. Secondly, following death reminders, people have higher fiscal aspirations and say they intend to spend more on clothing and entertainment. Death reminders also make people yearn for high-status luxury goods like Lexuses and Rolexes. And after thinking about their own death, people asked to draw pictures of coins and dollar bills actually draw bigger images. Money literally looms larger when death is on our minds. And really interestingly, after just handing people some money and having them count it, people's death anxiety is reduced.